Jake wiped the sweat from his forehead as he adjusted his camera lens. The mountains of Colorado stretched endlessly before him, painted in shades of orange and purple by the setting sun. He had been hiking for 3 days, searching for the perfect shot of wildlife in their natural habitat. His photography blog wasn't making him rich, but moments like these made every struggle worth it. The campfire crackled softly as Jake reviewed the day's photos on his camera screen. A family of deer drinking from a crystal-clear stream, an eagle soaring against the mountain peaks, a curious bear cub that had wandered close to his hiding spot. His followers would love these shots, just as he was about to call it a night. The entire sky erupted in brilliant flashes of light. At first, Jake thought it might be lightning, but the colors were all wrong. Green, blue, and silver lights danced across the darkness like some kind of celestial fireworks show. His photographer instincts kicked in, and he grabbed his camera, adjusting the settings for night photography. The lights grew brighter and more intense. Then came the sound, a deep, rumbling roar that seemed to shake the very mountains themselves. Jake's heart pounded as he realized this wasn't any natural phenomenon he'd ever seen. Something massive was moving through the sky, and it was coming down fast. A huge object, easily the size of a football stadium, crashed into the valley below his campsite. The impact sent shockwaves through the ground, knocking Jake off his feet. Trees swayed violently and rocks tumbled down the mountainside. His camera equipment scattered across the forest floor. For several minutes, Jake lay there, too shocked to move. The silence that followed was almost more frightening than the crash itself. Slowly, he gathered his courage and his scattered gear. Every instinct told him to pack up and leave immediately. But his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He climbed down the rocky slope toward the crash site, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The smell of burning metal and something else, something alien, filled the air. As he got closer, strange sounds echoed through the valley. Not human sounds, but something that made his skin crawl. The crashed object was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It looked like a ship, but its design was completely foreign. Smooth curves mixed with sharp angles, and even though it was clearly damaged, it still seemed to pulse with some kind of inner light. Strange symbols glowed along its surface, fading in and out like a dying heartbeat. But it wasn't the ship that made Jake's blood run cold. It was the battle happening right in front of it. Creatures that looked like giant insects, but walking on 2 legs, surrounded a lone figure near the wreckage. They were the size of grown men, but moved with the quick, twitchy movements of bugs. Their bodies were covered in dark, chitinous armor, and they made clicking, hissing sounds that sent chills down Jake's spine. In the center of this nightmare stood someone who was clearly not from Earth, but also not like the insect creatures. She was tall, much taller than any human, with skin that seemed to shimmer with a blue-silver glow. Her long hair flowed behind her like liquid mercury, and her eyes blazed with an amber light that was visible even from Jake's hiding spot. She moved like a dancer, but every movement was deadly. In her hands, she held weapons that looked like they were made of pure energy, crackling with electric blue power. When she struck at the creatures, they simply dissolved into ash. But there were so many of them. She was clearly injured. Jake watched in horror as the woman's movements became slower and more labored. Dark purple liquid, her blood, he realized, stained her strange armor. She was fighting bravely, but she was losing. The creatures were closing in, and she was running out of energy. Without thinking, Jake acted on pure instinct. He remembered the emergency flare gun in his backpack, something his father had insisted he'd carry on these wilderness trips. His hands shook as he loaded it and fired it directly into the group of creatures. The bright red flare exploded among them, and they scattered in confusion. Jake then grabbed his hunting rifle. He'd brought it for protection against bears, never imagining he'd use it like this. He fired several shots into the air, creating as much noise and chaos as possible. The distraction lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough. The tall woman took advantage of the confusion to activate some kind of device on her wrist. A beam of light shot up into the sky, and the remaining creatures suddenly turned and fled, disappearing into the darkness as quickly. As they had appeared, Jake watched as the woman swayed on her feet, then collapsed to her knees. Her weapons flickered and died, leaving her defenseless in the eerie silence that followed. He knew he should run, should get as far away from this impossible situation as possible. But as he watched her struggle to stay conscious, he realized he couldn't just leave her there. This was no longer about photography or adventure. This was about helping someone who desperately needed it. Even if that someone was from another world entirely. Taking a deep breath, Jake stepped out from his hiding place and walked toward the most dangerous and important moment of his life. Jake's hands trembled as he knelt beside the fallen warrior. Up close, she was even more incredible and terrifying than he'd imagined. Her skin wasn't just blue-silver. It seemed to have tiny patterns that shifted and moved like living tattoos. Her breathing was shallow. That purple blood was seeping through cracks in her armor. He'd taken a wilderness first aid course years ago, but nothing had prepared him for this. Still, bleeding was bleeding, right? Jake tore strips from his spare shirt and pressed them against the worst wounds. The woman's eyes fluttered open, and when she saw him, she tried to sit up quickly. "Oh, easy, easy," Jake said softly, the same tone he used with frightened animals. "I'm not going to hurt you." She spoke in a language that sounded like music mixed with thunder. Her voice was deep and melodic, but there was pain in it. "Ah." When Jake just stared at her blankly, she seemed to concentrate hard, and then spoke again. "Ow. Help, me." Her English was broken, but understandable. Each word seemed to take great effort. "Yeah, I helped you. Those things were going too, double quotes." Jake stopped himself. "You're hurt pretty bad. Let me get you back to my camp." Getting her there was like trying to move a tall, injured athlete. Even weakened, she was incredibly strong. Jake had to use every bit of his hiking experience to help her navigate the rocky terrain. She leaned heavily on him, and he could feel the heat radiating from her skin like she had a fever. His tent had never felt so small. The woman he really needed to know her name barely fit inside. Jake used his camping lantern to get a better look at her injuries. The purple blood had a strange, almost metallic smell, but it clotted similarly to human blood. He cleaned the wounds as best he could with his limited supplies. "What's your name?" he asked while working. "I'm Jake." She watched him carefully, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. "Zara," she said finally. "I am was commander." "Commander of what?" Zara's amber eyes grew distant. "My people. We protect. We fight the darkness that eats worlds." Jake paused in his bandaging. "Eats worlds? You mean those bug things?" "Vexstar?" She said the word like it tasted bitter. "They come to world. They eat everything. All life becomes." The implications of what she was saying hit Jake like a cold wave. "Are you telling me those things are going to eat Earth?" Zara nodded grimly. "My ship was watching, learning, but they found us. Killed my warriors now. She gestured weakly. At her damaged armor, "Now I cannot warn my people." Jake sat back on his heels. This was way beyond anything he'd ever dealt with. Alien invasions, bug monsters that ate planets. It sounded like a bad science fiction movie. But the evidence was right in front of him. The crashed ship, Zara's injuries, those terrifying creatures he'd seen. "There has to be something we can do," he said. "Some way to contact your people." Zara's expression was hopeless. Communication device broken. Ship broken. "I am alone on strange world, waiting to die." "Hey, don't talk like that." Jake surprised himself with how firm his voice was. "You're not alone, and you're not going to die. Not if I can help it." For the first time since he'd found her, Zara smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her look less like a terrifying alien warrior and more like, well, like a person. "You're a strange human, Jake. Why you help enemy?" "Enemy? You're not my enemy. You are fighting those things that want to eat my planet. It makes you a friend in my book." Over the next few hours, as Jake kept watch and Zara rested, she told him more about her world and her people. The Celestial Guard, she called them. They were warriors who traveled between stars, protecting peaceful worlds from threats like the Vexstar. Her people were honorable but rigid, following ancient codes and traditions that valued duty above all else. We learn to fight before we learn to speak, she explained. Motion is weakness, compassion is danger, but you...
What?
She looked at him with curiosity. You show compassion to stranger. This is not weakness. Where I come from, it's called being human, Jake said. We help each other. That's what makes us strong. By morning, Zara was much stronger. The bandages Jake had applied seemed to be working, and her natural healing was impressive. She insisted on examining the wreckage of her ship, hoping to salvage something useful. The ship was a total loss. But buried in the twisted metal, they found a small device that looked intact. Zara's eyes lit up when she saw it. Emergency beacon, she said. If we can repair, maybe contact home. Jake looked at the alien technology with its strange symbols and pulsing lights. I'm not exactly an expert on alien tech, but I'm pretty good with electronics. Maybe between the two of us... They spent the day working on the device. Jake's knowledge of circuits and Zara's understanding of the technology made them a surprisingly effective team. She was amazed by his willingness to learn, and he was fascinated by how different, yet similar their approaches to problem-solving were. As they worked, Jake couldn't help but notice how Zara's entire demeanor changed when she was focused on a task. The pain and hopelessness faded, replaced by the confidence of someone who was used to overcoming impossible odds. You're pretty amazing, you know that, he said during a break. Zara looked confused. Amazing? Yeah? I mean, you crash-landed on an alien world, got attacked by monsters, and you're still fighting. Most people would have given up by now. Giving up is not an option for Celestial Guard, she said simply. We fight until we cannot fight, then we fight more. Jake grinned. Yeah, well, you're not alone in this fight anymore. We're going to get that beacon working. Contact your people and figure out how to stop these Vexstar things. For the first time since her ship had crashed, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. This strange human with his gentle hands and fierce determination was showing her that perhaps her people's way wasn't the only way to be strong. As the sun set on their second day together, they finally got the beacon working. The device hummed to life, its lights pulsing in a complex pattern. Zara spoke into it in her musical language, her voice strong and clear. Now all they could do was wait and hope that someone was listening. The beacon's response came 3 days later, just as Jake was starting to lose hope. He was gathering firewood when he heard Zara's sharp intake of breath from inside the tent. He dropped the branches and rushed back to find her staring at the device with an expression he'd never seen before. Pure devastation. What is it? Jake asked, settling beside her. Did they answer? Zara nodded slowly, her amber eyes filled with unshed tears. Yes, they answered. Her voice was barely a whisper. The device projected a hologram. Stern-looking alien with similar features to Zara but covered in intricate armor. When he spoke, his voice was cold and commanding. Even though Jake couldn't understand the language, he could tell this wasn't good news. What did he say? Jake asked when the message ended. Zara was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Commander Thane. He was my mentor, trained me since I was a child. She looked up at Jake with hollow eyes. He says mission is over. Earth is lost cause. My people will not risk more lives for primitive world. Jake felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. They're just going to abandon us? Let those things eat our planet? Worse, Zara said, her voice breaking. They establish quarantine zone. No ships, in or out. Earth becomes prison until Vexstar finish feeding. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jake thought about his sister back home, his parents, his friends. Millions of people going about their daily lives, not knowing that monsters from space were coming to destroy everything they'd ever known. There has to be something we can do, Jake said desperately. Some way to change their minds. Zara shook her head. Orders are orders. I am commanded to return immediately if I survived. Leave this world to its fate. And you're just going to obey. Jake couldn't keep the anger out of his voice. After everything we've been through, you do not understand. Zara snapped, then immediately looked ashamed. I am sorry. You've been kind to me. But I am Celestial Guard. We do not disobey orders. Ever. Jake stood up and started pacing around the small tent. So that's it? Game over? You're just going? To leave, double quotes, Zara started, then stopped. Her internal struggle was written all over her face. There is something. Ancient law of my people. But I cannot ask. Ask what? Zara looked at him with such intensity that Jake felt like she was looking right through him. When warrior saves life of Celestial Guard, debt is created. Sacred bond called Velthor. The saved one must serve the saver until debt is repaid. Jake blinked. Serve. Wait. What do you mean serve? Complete loyalty, protection. My skills, my knowledge, my life, all belongs to the one who saved me. Zara's voice grew stronger as she spoke. But this is not small thing. To invoke Velthor, saved warrior must kneel before saver and make formal request. And if I accepted this, whatever it is, you wouldn't have to leave? I could not leave. Bond would be stronger than any order. Zara's eyes blazed with sudden hope. But I cannot ask this of you. Would be selfish. You did not know about Velthor when you helped me. Jake stopped pacing. What exactly would this mean? For both of us? Zara took a deep breath. I would be bound to protect you, fight for you, serve your wishes until my debt is paid. Could take years, maybe lifetime. It would have warrior of Celestial Guard as your personal guardian. And the downside? My people would see this as betrayal. I would be outcast. And you, She hesitated. You would be responsible for my choices. If I die serving you, that weight is yours to carry. Jake thought about it. Really thought about it. This wasn't some fantasy adventure. This was real life, with real consequences. But then he thought about those terrible bug creatures, about his family, about the billions of people who had no idea what was coming. Would you be able to help fight the Vexstar if you were bound to me? Protecting you means protecting your world. I would fight with everything I have. Jake made his decision, and do it. Ask me. Zara's eyes widened. You do not understand what you are agreeing to? I understand enough. Those things are going to destroy Earth unless someone stops them. Your people won't help, but you will if you're bound to me. That's good enough for me. Tears finally spilled down Zara's cheeks. You would accept this burden? For people you do not even know? That's what humans do, Jake said simply. We help each other. What happened next was something Jake would never forget. Zara, this incredible warrior who could fight monsters with her bare hands, slowly lowered herself to her knees before him. She placed her hands on the ground and bowed her head. Jake of Earth, she said, her voice formal but trembling with emotion. I am Zara of the Celestial Guard. You saved my life when I was defeated, showed me kindness when I was stranger, gave me hope when I had none. I have no right to ask this of you, but I beg you, accept my service. Let me repay the debt I owe. Let me fight for your world as you fought for me. Jake felt the weight of the moment. This proud, powerful woman was humbling herself before him, asking him to let her throw away everything she'd ever known for the chance to save his world. I accept, he said quietly, but not as your master, as your friend and partner. Zara looked up at him with surprise. That is not how Velthor works. Then we'll make our own rules, Jake said, reaching down to help her stand. We're going to save Earth, and we're going to do it together. As equals, as Zara stood, something seemed to change in the air around them.
Ow.
The beacon on the ground pulsed once with brilliant light, then went dark. The bond was sealed. What happens? Now, Jake asked. Zara wiped her tears, and for the first time since receiving the message, she smiled. Now we prepare for war. Your people may not know it yet, but they have just gained their first alien ally. Jake looked at this incredible woman who had just pledged her life to saving his world, and he felt something he hadn't felt since this whole thing started. Hope. Real hope. So where do we begin? Zara's smile turned fierce. We begin by making those Vexstar regret the day they decided to threaten your world. The first thing Zara did after their bond was sealed was teach Jake how to properly hold a weapon. Not a gun, something far more advanced. She had salvaged a small energy device from her ship's wreckage, something she called a pulse striker. It looked like a metal rod with glowing blue crystals embedded in it. Feel the weight, she instructed, guiding Jake's hands. This is not your earth weapon. It responds to your intent, your focus. Think of it as extension of your will. Jake tried to concentrate, but the device felt awkward in his hands. He was used to cameras and hiking gear, not alien weapons. When he pressed what looked like a trigger, nothing happened. You are thinking too much, Zara said patiently. Your mind is scattered. Focus on one thing: protection. Protection of what you love. Jake closed his eyes and thought about his sister's laugh, his mother's cooking, the way his father always worried about him on these camping trips. He thought about all the people back home who had no idea what was coming. The device suddenly hummed to life, its crystals glowing brighter. Good, Zara said, and Jake could hear the pride in her voice. Now you understand. Training became their daily routine. Every morning, Zara would put Jake through exercises that seemed impossible. At first, she taught him to move silently through the forest, to read the subtle signs that meant danger was near, to trust his instincts when his mind couldn't process what was happening. Vexstar are not like human enemies, she explained during one of their sessions. They do not think as individuals. They are hive mind, one consciousness controlling many bodies. This makes them predictable, but also very dangerous. Jake was getting better, but he still felt completely out of his depth.
Oh.
Am I supposed to fight creatures that can dissolve people with a touch? You do not fight them directly, Zara said. You fight smart. Use environment. Use their weaknesses. Use your human creativity. My people, we train for combat since birth, but we think in patterns. You humans, you surprise. She wasn't wrong. Jake had already surprised her several times during their training. When she set up a mock battle scenario, he didn't charge in like a warrior. Instead, he used his photographer's eye to spot the best hiding places, created diversions with rocks and sticks, and found angles of attack she hadn't considered. This is why your people might survive, Zara said, after he successfully defeated her in a training exercise. You do not fight with honor. You fight to win. Is that bad? Against Vexstar? His only way? As the days passed, they worked together to create weapons from the salvaged technology. Jake's knowledge of electronics, combined with Zara's understanding of alien tech, led to some creative solutions. They rigged his camping equipment with energy cells, turning flashlights into makeshift weapons and as portable. Radio into a communication device that could detect Vexstar movements, but it wasn't. All about fighting. In the quiet moments between training sessions, Jake learned more about Zara's world and her people. She told him about the crystal cities of her home planet, about the ancient academies where warriors trained for decades before earning their rank, about the code of honor that governed every aspect of their lives. Sounds lonely, Jake said one evening as they sat by their campfire. Lonely? Zara seemed confused by the word. I mean, all that training, all those rules. When do you get to just ... live? Have fun? Fall in love? Zara was quiet for a long time. Love is weakness. Attachment leads to poor judgment in battle. We are taught this from childhood. But you're attached to me now, right? Through this bond thing? That is ... different. That is duty. Jake looked at her skeptically. Is it really? Zara's cheeks took on a deeper blue color, her version of blushing, Jake realized. I do not know. These feelings, they are new to me. My people would say, I am corrupted by human emotion. My people would say, you're learning to be happy. Their conversation was interrupted by a sound that made both of them freeze. A low humming noise like a swarm of insects, but magnified 1,000 times. Zara was on her feet instantly, her hand moving to the weapon at her side. They come, she whispered. Jake grabbed his modified equipment and followed her to the edge of their camp. In the distance, he could see lights moving through the forest. Not the warm glow of campfires, but the cold, greenish light of Vexstar technology. "Scout ships," Zara said grimly. "They search for me. For us. How many?" "3. Ships. Maybe 30 warriors." Jake felt his heart sink. 30 of those creatures. They'd barely survived the first encounter, and that was with the element of surprise. "We run?" he asked. "No, we cannot run forever. And if they report back that I am alive, they will send more. Many more." Zara's expression was determined. "We end this now." "How?" Zara smiled, and Jake was reminded that beneath her gentle demeanor was a warrior trained from birth. "We give them what they are looking for. Not in the way they expect." She quickly outlined a plan that was both brilliant and terrifying. They would use the crashed ship as bait, make it look like Zara was trying to repair it. When the Vexstar came to investigate, they would trigger a trap using the ship's remaining power cells. "This is insane," Jake said as they prepared their ambush. "Yes," Zara agreed. "Very insane, very human. I am learning your ways." As they waited in the darkness for the enemy to arrive, Jake realized something had changed between them. They weren't just bound by duty anymore, they were friends, partners, maybe something more, though neither of them was ready to admit it yet. The first Vexstar scout appeared at the edge of the clearing, its insectoid form moving with predatory. Jake's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger, but Zara's hand on his shoulder kept him steady. "Wait," she whispered. "What?" "Let them come closer." More creatures emerged from the forest surrounding the crashed ship. Jake could see their leader. Larger than the others, with more elaborate armor and glowing red eyes instead of the usual yellow. "Now," Zara said. Jake triggered their trap, and the forest erupted in light and sound. The plan worked perfectly, almost too perfectly. As the enemy scattered and regrouped, Jake realized they had just announced their presence to every Vexstar. "In the area," he said, as he and Zara prepared for the fight of their lives. "At least we're not bored." Zara laughed, actually laughed as she charged into battle. "No, Jake of Earth, we are definitely not bored." 3 months. That's all the time Jake and Zara had before the main invasion force arrived. 3 months to learn everything they could about fighting an enemy that had destroyed countless worlds. 3 months to become the unlikely heroes that Earth didn't even know it needed. The first sign of the invasion was the sky changing color. What should have been a normal Tuesday morning turned dark red as massive ships blocked out the sun.
Oh.
Jake stood outside his tent, now permanently set, up in a hidden valley, watching as humanity got its first glimpse of the Vexstar fleet. "So many," Zara whispered beside him. Her face was pale, and Jake could see the fear in her amber eyes. "More than my intelligence reports suggested. They really mean to consume everything." Jake's phone buzzed with emergency alerts. News reports, panicked messages from his family, government warnings to stay indoors. The world was in chaos, and most people didn't even understand what they were facing yet. "The governments will try to fight them," Jake said, reading the latest. News update. "Military responses, nuclear weapons maybe?" Zara shook her head sadly. "Will not work. Vexstar ships have shields that turn energy weapons back on attackers. Your missiles will be like throwing pebbles at a mountain." Over the past weeks, Jake and Zara had managed to destroy several scout groups using guerrilla tactics. Hit-and-run attacks, ambushes, using the terrain to their advantage. But this was different. This was war on a scale that made their small victories seem meaningless. "We can't fight all of them," Jake said, feeling overwhelmed for the first time. "Since this whole thing started. But we do not need to fight them all." Zara pointed to the largest ship in the center of the fleet. "Command vessel, Vexstar. Hivemind operates from there. Destroy it." And the others become confused, directionless. Jake stared at the massive ship. It was easily the size of a city, bristling with weapons and surrounded by smaller vessels. "How exactly are we supposed to get close to that thing?" Zara was quiet for a moment, and Jake could see her working through possibilities in her mind. "There is a way, but you will not like it." She explained her plan, and Jake's heart sank with every word. It was brilliant, desperate, and completely insane. They would use the wreckage of her ship to create a massive electromagnetic pulse. The explosion would disable the command ship's shields for exactly 37 seconds. Long enough for someone to get inside and destroy the hive mind. Core. Someone meaning you, Jake said when she finished. It is only way. I know their ship designs, their technology. You cannot do this part alone. And the part you're not telling me? The part where you don't make it out? Zara's silence was answer enough. Jake felt anger building in his chest. No, absolutely not. We find another way. There is no other way. Zara's voice was sharp with frustration. This is why I was trained, why I became warrior, to make sacrifices that others cannot. You said we were partners. Partners don't sacrifice each other. Sometimes they do. Yes. Zara's voice softened. Jake, you have given me something I'd never had before. Choice, purpose beyond duty. Let me choose to save your world. The argument went on for hours, but deep down, Jake knew she was right. They had tried everything else, contacted every expert they could reach, used every trick they had learned. This was their only shot. The hardest part was watching Zara prepare for what she knew was a one-way mission. She spent time recording messages in her own language, final words for her people, if any of them ever cared to listen. Detailed instructions about her technology, her weapons, everything she thought might help him survive what came after. Promise me something, she said the night before they put their plan into action. Anything. If this works, if your world survives, tell people about us. About what we learned together. Maybe your people and mine can find better way to know each other. Jake nodded, not trusting his voice. The next morning brought chaos. The Vexstar had begun their assault on major cities around the world. Watched the news with growing horror as familiar landmarks disappeared under swarms of the insectoid creatures. My time was running out. Their plan worked perfectly at first. The electromagnetic pulse disabled the command ship exactly as Zara had predicted. In the confusion that followed, she managed to infiltrate the massive vessel, while Jake provided covering fire from their hidden position. For 20 agonizing minutes, Jake heard nothing. Then Zara's voice crackled through their communication. Device filled with static and pain, found the core. But Jake, there are too many of them. I cannot reach the escape route. Then wait. Find another way out. No time. They are adapting to the pulse. Shields coming back online. Her voice was getting weaker. Jake, it has been an honor to serve beside you, to call you friend. Zara, don't do this. We'll figure something out. Already done. Tell my people. Tell. Them I learned what it means to fight for love, not just duty. The explosion was visible from 50 miles away. A brilliant flash of light that seemed to tear a hole in the sky itself. When Jake's vision cleared, the command ship was gone, and the remaining Vexstar vessels were flying in confused circles, their coordination completely broken. Over the following days, Earth's military forces were able to drive off the leaderless invasion fleet. The creatures that had already landed became scattered and disorganized. Easy targets for conventional weapons now, that they had no central command. Jake found himself thrust into a role. He never wanted Earth's first contact with alien civilizations. When the celestial guard ships finally arrived, drawn by the same beacon that had brought the devastating news months earlier, they found not a dead world, but a planet that had successfully defended itself. The guard's commander, the same stern alien who had abandoned Earth before, listened in amazement as Jake told the story of Zara's sacrifice. He spoke of her courage, her honor, and most importantly, her growth beyond the rigid codes of her upbringing. She broke our laws, the commander said when Jake finished. She saved our world, Jake replied firmly. Both of our worlds, if you think about it. In the months that followed, Jake became an ambassador of sorts. He traveled between Earth and the Celestial Guard worlds, sharing Zara's story and her belief that cooperation was stronger than conquest. Her sacrifice became a legend among her people, proof that their ancient ways could evolve. Jake never stopped missing her. But every time he looked up at the stars, he remembered her words about fighting for love instead of duty. Earth was safe, and two civilizations were learning to understand each other. It wasn't the ending they had planned. But it was the beginning of something better, something Zara would have been proud of. And sometimes, on clear nights, when the stars seemed especially bright, Jake could swear he heard her laughter carried on the wind, reminding him that some bonds transcend even death itself.